Hello, welcome back to the series Securing Cyberspace. Jurlind and I will talk again about key management solutions. Last time we defined what are keys, how they are used, and why it is important to manage them. Jurlind mentioned different requirements, and today he will go more into this topic. What are concrete requirements of one of his clients and how he found the proper solution for this client regarding to the requirements. Please start.
Yep. Good morning. Yeah, good to be here, Frederica, and good to see you again. Thank you for the introduction. As you said already last time, we talked a little bit about the fundamentals on key management systems. We touched on the requirements. Nevertheless, it's always a difference between theory and praxis. So what I wanted to talk today is about what requirement were important from a practical perspective, from an international client that we have that is internationally located. So what were these requirements that were important for the clients? And starting with the first one, which is the support of a full key lifecycle management. And I want to say for each of these requirements a couple of words so that we have a better understanding why these requirements are important. And the full key life cycle, you can distinguish this in three phases. So you have the pre-operational phase where you usually register, generate the keys, and you distribute the keys. And then you have the operational phase where keys are stored, they are rotated, they are backupped, and they are also recovered sometimes. And the last phase is the post-operational phase, which it's also very important because then you archive old keys, and maybe you would need those keys sometimes in the future if there is data that you still have, for instance, encrypted with these keys, but you have archived them and you have archived also the data. So you still need access to those keys so that you can access your data, which is being stored confidentially. You revoke keys, for instance, if keys are, let's say, corrupted and they go into the hands of a third party, then you want to revoke those keys so that those are not used anymore. Usually, for example, for authentication or for signing data, or even for encrypting and decrypting. In this case, another very important requirement, which is directly connected to the life cycle, is supporting automatic and flexible key rotation. Similar in the password world, when we say you need to change your password from time to time, though not every often as that was recommended before, but from time to time it's probably makes sense to change your passwords. The same holds true for the keys. So keys, they have also a lifespan where they are used, and then you, after this lifespan is ended, you want to rotate them and to have new keys and to kind of implement what we call the principle of perfect forward secrecy, where you actually change the keys per session in communication protocols. This is a kind of implementing the principle that you want to rotate those keys from time to time. And this should be automatically. So you don't want, so imagine you have so many applications and users that are making use of these keys, using them in everyday life for authentication, for encrypting, and so on and so forth. Now imagine you need to change those manually. So this will become a nightmare. So the idea is here that this tool from a functional perspective should support you to do this in an automatic way. Further requirements that are very important from a practical perspective are the support of different APIs. And one of the APIs is, for example, the REST API, so that you are able actually to integrate the key management solution to the application via programmatically, so that you don't need to, and you need the standard interface. So usually the tools today, especially in the cloud native environment, they use the REST API for communicating, for interchanging data between applications and tools. So by supporting the REST API, you make sure that this tool can be accessed and things can be executed, functionality can be executed on the tool in, let's say, in a standard way. Another interface or another protocol that needs to be supported is so-called the PCKS, which is public cryptography key standard protocol 11. And you need that especially when you have to store your keys in a hardware security module. So usually this hardware security module, they all talk this protocol. So in order for you, let's say, to not be vendor lock-in with respect to a specific hardware security module, because this is a piece of hardware which costs you, let's say, from 20,000 to 30,000 euros and can go even up. So you don't want to be, let's say, locked into a specific hardware solution. You might want to use maybe a stronger hardware solution. So as long as you have this standard protocol supported, you're able to exchange this hardware modules that are that back up your keys. Another protocol is the key management interoperability protocol, which is also let's say a standard way to interchange keys between different applications, and this is becoming very important nowadays. So this is supported by a number of applications, for example, storage applications, and so on. So it is important to also support this as a protocol. Other requirements that are very important from a practical perspective is separation of duties. As we talk about access control, so it doesn't make sense to have one place where you all store your keys and everyone that has access can access all of these keys. So you need the kind of a role-based access control on this system, where you can split duties. You have, for example, key owners, and you have system administrators. You have cryptography officers that decide, for example, which cryptography protocols should be used and should not be used, because these tools might support even old protocols with respect to compatibility. Nevertheless, it wouldn't be recommendable to use those in sensitive areas where maybe these protocols or cryptographic systems are not being considered as secure anymore. Connected to that is the next one, which is the supporting multi-factor authentication. So you have this separation of duties, and but this, of course, also necessary to have a strong authentication against the key management system, so that even if you lose, or one of your employees, the credentials get lost and get stolen, so at least you have a second line of defense by using multi-factor authentication when applications or system accounts or technical accounts or human users access the system and access the keys, or whatever, execute operation on the key management solution. The next one, which is very important, that is directly connected to the life cycle, is the backup and restore. So which I was talking about before on the archiving. So you need backup and restore. So it's, let's say, it's one of the first principles that you need to think about when you think on security or cybersecurity in general. So backup and restore, even it seems very simple and very intuitive, but this is something that you really need to be aware of, that this solution should provide you a means of doing backups and restoring your keys again so that you can access the data, because once these keys are gone, then the data is gone. So it's very difficult. Um, Another requirement that is important is especially with respect to access control is the so-called dual control or the quorum control, meaning that if you, for example, as a user decide to rotate a key or to delete a key, for very specific use cases where these keys are used for very sensitive data that you don't want to use in no case, you have the possibility that to implement the so-called 4 eyes principle, to make this simple. Meaning that if someone performs an action on a key and says, okay, this key needs to be deleted, then you need the confirmation of a second person in order to delete this data. So a second person need to agree and need to confirm that this key can be deleted. And this is the so-called like dual key control. One other very important and let's say kind of fancy from a practical perspective, but not from a theoretical perspective of requirement is the split key. So you want to split keys in shares. So you have a cryptographic key and you want to split these keys in different shares and store maybe these shares in different locations. So even if an attacker accesses one of these shares, he is or she is not able to do anything because part of the keys are missing. So you kind of sharing your secret between different components. And so an attacker needs to access all of the components at the same time in order to compound the key that is being used. So this is a very fancy, let's say, from a practical perspective, but it's going to be very important in the for nowadays and in the future, because it makes the life of an attacker very difficult to access a key or to have one key at the same time, because also these shares you can change, like rotate, so you can create new shares for the same key. So it is always the same key, but you share this in different pieces each and every time. So you have also the time as a factor of increasing the security. So if you have access on one share at n specific point in time, if you, let's say 5 minutes later, you get access to the second component, unfortunately, this attacker won't find the key share he was hoping for, because we have, let's say, a 3 minutes interval of rechanging the share. So you would get, again, a completely new share. So this is a very important feature.
So, sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
Just for the user perspective, this sharing is just for the attacker from the outside. If you use the keys, you have access to all the share points and can use the key in the whole.
Yes, exactly. So if you are able, so let's say if you are, so we're talking here about access to a system. So if you are a legitimate user, you would be able to access the shares and to perform operations with the keys. If you are not a legitimate user, but you have gotten access to one of the components, so you are not authenticated as a legitimate user, so you need access to the other components, again, like with, I don't know, hacking into the component, getting access from through let's say an exploit, then you won't be able to get access to all these shares. So this is the idea behind it. Other important requirements are, for example, being able to deploy on-premise. So you don't always need to want to deploy on the cloud because of maybe of security requirements that you need to fulfill, or security policies. You want to configure policies on whatever key length, key rotation intervals, etc. So all of this is important. And you want to have support on confidentiality and integrity protection of the keys that are stored. So usually these components that are generating and storing the keys should be confidentiality and integrity protected. Um, Another one is the FIPS level, which we anyway talked about, which gives you a kind of, let's say, a kind of level of security that that this system provides. So there are four levels in the FIPS. So it's level 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So depending, so from level 3, you need a hardware security module to back up your keys. So they won't. So your root keys shouldn't leave this hardware security module. They need to be stored in there. And all of these requirements were important from a practical perspective. So for our client. And taking into consideration these requirements, so I did a feasibility study. So I did kind of extensive research, and I identified that there are, let's say, more than 40 solutions out there that, well, support key management solutions. And from those, I could identify around 5 solutions that would fulfill these requirements that we just mentioned. And I can name some these. So that was the Thales group, which were providing their Cipher Trust Manager solution, KittyCat, and the Vorometric Data Security Manager, again from Thales. We have from Cryptomatic the Crypto Key Management System, from Fortanix, the self-defending KMS, Quintessence Labs with their QCrypt solution, and last but not least, Unbound with their Unbound key control. So these 5 solutions out of the 40 or 40 something that I could find in my research, they were fulfilling these requirements. And especially one of the KO criteria was the FIPS level. So our client it was necessary for the client to have at least the FIPS level 2. So a lot of these solutions would fulfill only FIPS level 1, as they are software solutions usually. So you would need a better solution. And by comparing those into more details, those 5 solutions that I just mentioned, we came into conclusions that 2 of these solutions are the more promising one, which was the Fortanix self-defending KMS and the Unbound key control from Unbound Security. And then we went to the next step, like doing a proof of concept with these solutions. And in the next episodes, we would like to introduce you to these solutions. And we have invited special guests from the companies, and they will tell us a little bit more what makes their solution special in the market, and what are their specific, let's say, unique selling points. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Just to sum it up, all the solutions have their reason to exist, because I think your client has very, very special and detailed requirements. But yeah, I'm looking forward to meet Unbound and Fortanix.
Cool. So then see you next time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye.